I'm Mira Rubin here with you on on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is values. We make all kinds of decisions in our lives and in our culture based on values that we often are completely unaware of. And I want to talk about what kind of values we want to embrace to create a thriving future. So, before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present, and let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. Fill your lungs with clean, crisp oxygen, lighting you up, enlivening, energizing, oxygenating all your cells through your bloodstream, nourishing your organs. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress, any negativity or fatigue. And now let's just take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, energizing, electrifying all your molecules and all your electrons and connecting you with the world beyond. And now let's just gently exhale. Exhale any remaining fatigue or negativity, tension, stress. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Feel the tingling and the tickling as you gently rub your fingers against your palms and enjoy the deliciousness of that sensation. Good morning. Good morning. Great to be here with you guys. Welcome, Rosalind and Robert and everybody else who's joining us. We're going to talk about values today. I think I've mentioned Clubhouse to you guys. It's a new platform that's really quite remarkable for incredibly engaging conversations about all different kinds of things with all different kinds of people, luminaries, and as well as just normal average people discussing meaningful things, kind of like we do here on a daily basis, but about all different topics. And this morning I was listening to a conversation about AI, artificial intelligence. And one of the things they kept talking about was looking to eliminate bias in AI. And I didn't have the opportunity to actually get engaged in the conversation, but what it made me think about is, what does that mean? What does it mean to eliminate bias? And is that something that's desirable? Like, I think that the move toward AI is very much about efficiency and what is intelligence. They're talking about ultimately being able to design AI in such a way that it will learn for itself. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about how do we decide what to learn? And I realized, or what arose for me was the notion that we are driven by our values. And I think that when we think about artificial intelligence, there needs to be some sense of morality built into it. One of the things when we think about capitalism and how we have given corporations essentially rights as humans, um, that what's missing in a corporation, or in most traditional corporations, is a moral code. That the value, the driving value for corporations has been profit, and pretty much profit at any cost, profit at any profit as a value in itself. And this also led me to be thinking about economies, because we had a conversation on Clubhouse yesterday about economics and economics for the future, and how we look at our economic system and the success of our economic system, and how it's the metrics for it are really based on growth. And growth is measured by uh, um, gross domestic product, GDP, and that's sort of a way that we have traditionally evaluated the health of an economy. But the thing is, it's valuing growth without any kind of consideration for the quality of life that people are experiencing, or the health, actual physical health of people. And so when I think about values, the things that we choose to learn, because they're talking about AI and AI learning on its own. When we think about human beings, we choose to learn things, certain things, based on our values and how we value those things. And in our own lives, we choose, for instance, to nurture a relationship because we value connection. We choose to work out our differences because maybe we have a value for peace. Good morning, Dennis. Wonderful to have you here. So we're talking about the values that underlie our. I'm just looking to see where Maggie is. I'm going to grab her. Sorry. We look at. She's somewhat destructive of certain things, and I'm trying to. Sorry for disappearing for a second, but if I let her have free reign, she can create quite a lot of devastation, actually. So I'm trying to entice her with food today instead of letting her run rampage on my plants and some art things I have, and etc. So anyway, values. And actually that was a demonstration. I value this piece of art that I have here that she likes to chew on and destroy. So I went and got her, and I appreciate the latitude you guys give me to be able to do something like that. That's the price of having her here on a daily basis. Anyway, what kind of values drive you? One of the things that I do with my clients is I have these values cards that I created. They're called core connection cards. I may have shown them to you at another time. And there are 125 words that, here's the back of them, but words that are our values. And I do this exercise with my clients where we have them go through all the cards in the deck and pick out the words that are essential to who they are. Yeah, so Robert says, so Maggie changed her values from eating the keyboard to eating art. I added the word eating. Yes, she did. She changed her values and her tastes. Anyway, so very funny. Anyway, when we think about values, like what are your core values? This is something that we live by and we are driven by, but we often are not really consciously alert to what those values are. And if we're not consciously alert to what our primary core values are, then we can end up being in violation of those values without even realizing it. And that creates incredible disruption internally. And so this exercise, if you're interested in getting these cards, by the way, they are available for sale on my website. So you can order them from my website. I believe you can order them. And if you, I'm pretty sure you can order them from the website. Yes, I believe so, through PayPal. So if you're interested, they're I think $30 including shipping. Anyway, and if you're interested in doing the values exercise without buying the cards, there, if you go to my website, yourcoreconnection.com, and download the your Inner Success Blueprint, 5 Keys to Discovering What You Were Born to Do. The back of that little booklet, it's a PDF, the like the last page or something, has a list of values so that you can go through and you eliminate the ones that are obvious to eliminate. And then of the ones that remain, you create clusters of them, because there are some that feel like they're grouped together, and then eliminate until you arrive at maybe somewhere between 5 to 7 or so primary values, and then create the hierarchy. And the way that you do that is to say, well, which is more important, creativity or love, for example, and provided, of course, that creativity and love were in your core values. So really, 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 really powerful and enlightening exercise. I really encourage you to do it. And Robert says, one of my core values is health and healing. And so the interesting thing about looking at what these values are is, what does health mean to you? So not only do you get to choose these values or identify these values, because it's not a wish list, it's really initially, at least for the fundamental values, it's not a wish list, it's a list of what is really true in your heart and soul. And the question to ask as you're discovering these values is, what is essential to who you are? So for me, creativity or expression, that's fundamental to who I am. Freedom is an essential value for me. And you'll discover, you can, there are words, there are values that may be essential to you that may not be on that list. Originally, the list was over 500, and it was overwhelming, and it was also prohibitively expensive to get them created. So I whittled them down to 125. But Robert says, and that is what drives me and the business, the future growth and expansion of it, health and healing. So, are health and healing one and the same thing? What does that look like? What does it look like if that's a value for you? What does it mean? It's important to discover the nuance, because what you mean by health and healing may be very different from what somebody else means by health and healing. So it's important to dive in and explore that. So Rosalind says, the act of making coffee can be done so many ways. Someone can value convenience or speed, for example, using K-pods, while someone will seek out beans that are harvested using fair labor, and some can't drink coffee because it makes them jittery. Do we value the taste, method of brewing, affecting how much time? The ritual of making coffee can add value to one's morning musings. are values essentially priorities? I think that's a great question, because to your conversation, Rosalind, about coffee, I value, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I have at times enjoyed coffee, but it's not part of my routine. And if I drink coffee, typically it does make me jittery. And, anyway, but let's say I value sustainability. So when I do make coffee, I don't have a coffee maker that uses K-pods. Why? Because they're plastic, and it's wasteful, and it's destructive to our environment. So for me, I have a French press, and I grind my own beans when I make coffee. So there is so much around that, and so much around our rituals that are value driven. So I think values can be priorities. Maybe they drive our priorities. How's that? So to me, sustainability and nature is a really high value. So when I go and I buy produce that's in bulk, but it's in plastic bags. And so that is a challenge to my values. Like every time I do that, I have a twinge, and I'm making choices about, well, it's cost effective, it's it's convenient, it it I'm making a trade-off, and so that's a trade-off of values, and there is a prioritizing, right? So cost is definitely a factor for me in making decisions around food purchases. Health is also a consideration. And watching how we juggle our values around even the most fundamental things is a really important thing. And so you talk about beans that are harvested using fair labor practices. Exactly. So where are we making our choices? What are the underlying values? And how are they driving us in our lives? So Robert says, yes, creativity and sharing knowledge to help everyone. Yes. So the things that I believe are going to be helpful may not be the same as the things that you believe are going to be helpful. And so our values, we could say, yes, we both agree that we want to do things that are going to be helpful, but how does that show up? And what are the values that drive these things? And so Robert says, health meaning being in the pristine state of health by restoring the natural healing process of the body. So underlying that is a value for nature, I'm gathering, because you're talking about the natural process of the body. So there's some reverence for nature, or for our innate innate wholeness. So there's an underlying value there too. So Shelley says, what's the topic? The topic is values. Thank you, Robert, for replying. We're talking about values and how the values of our culture are often invisible to us, but they drive so many of our decisions. So one of the value propositions, I think, I don't know if that's actually the best way to phrase it, but one of the assumed values in our culture is growth, you know, growth and expansion. And underlying that is there's a huge value in our culture for consumerism. And these are, like, when we think about an economy, the value of the economy is measured by its growth. And the thing that we get to think about is that unending growth is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. We have a finite planet, right? We have finite resources. So to be valuing endless growth of a company, of a business, of our wallets, of, you know, our productivity, endless growth is not sustainable. It's like you can't be on overdrive all the time, because you can't sustain it. You can't. So there's a matter of balance. There's when we were talking about economies yesterday, there's a concept called circular economy, which is really connecting with the cycle of nature, essentially, that what we create has a cycle through which it doesn't end up being trash. Like, there is no such thing as garbage or trash. That ultimately everything is the trash from one thing becomes the feed for another. So Shelley says, completely agree. I buy used as much as possible, and am part of many free and bartering groups. That's awesome, Shelley. And in terms of economies, one of the things that we were talking about was gift economy and also bartering. And it's a very different mindset where things are traded or given in a gift economy. Things are given for to gain social capital, essentially, which is kind of a horrible way to break things down. You know, when you're talking about social capital as like a means of exchange, but what it means really is building relationship. You know, really, there's always a reciprocity, right? And an expectation of reciprocity of some sort. Not, you know, I give you this and it's worth exactly what you give me, which is, you know, a challenge with bartering as well. As how do we have an equitable trade? How do we come to agree upon what is equitable and fair? And that also comes down to values, right? Assuming that it should be equitable and fair. But with giving in a gift economy, there's giving and receiving, and there is an implied reciprocity. Like, I'm helping you out, you're going to help me out. And when that in that environment, what's valued is contribution, right? And that's very different from the kind of economy that we live in, which values things over people in many situations. So good morning, Isabel. Welcome. It's great to have you here. And Robert says, without the need of traditional medicine, if we think how the ancient tribes lived. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed something. Robert says, returning to the roots of natural healing and restoring nature to its primordial natural state. So obviously there's a deep value of nature and the intelligence of nature. And Shelley says, exactly. And then Robert says, without the need of traditional medicine, if we think how traditional, I am wondering if you, okay, so he says, if we think how ancient tribes lived, they didn't have medicine such as pills to take if they had an illness, they just healed. Well, they used lots of traditional medicines like herbs and poultices, and it had connection with the plant world and the medicines of the plant world. There were medicine men and women who were schooled in herbalism and nature's remedies. So Irma says, is more important than human life. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. Um, whoa. Let's see. Sorry, I missed what you said before that, Irma. So Irma said, wow, it shocked me to consider this, how and when money, possession is more important than human life. Well, look at corporations, right? Dumping toxic waste that is deadly into waterways, that kills fish, that kills and people by creating cancers and all kinds of other things. And that is very much how our economy is built, is that profit is the most important thing rather than what the impact is on society and culture. And Shelley says, the free and bartering groups I'm in have created a lovely community as people share how they are enjoying something they received from someone else, and that makes everyone feel connected and helpful. That's really cool, Shelley. Are these open bartering groups? Are they in person sorts of venues, or are they online? Because I can imagine that it would be possible to be doing it online. It's just people would have to incur shipping charges, though, I guess. But what the thing that you're talking about, Shelley, is that these groups are building community. And that's phenomenal. That's an amazing and wonderful thing that is completely absent in so much of our transactional exchanges with money, right? It's very isolating and separate in many ways. Although if we're in a local economy, if we're dealing with people in a store on a regular basis or a local vendor, there's the ability to be building deeper relationships with people. And that's what has been sort of falling away in the in our culture in so many ways. Obviously we're now isolated because of COVID, but so much of our economy and the way that our economics works in our system is really very much isolating, and I believe is responsible for a lot of the friction and the greed and the so many of the what we would perceive as the negatives of our culture. Irma says all the things that should be at our service became the masters. Big point, Irma, and more important than the basic value of human life itself. Exactly. And when we start externalizing our value as human beings by saying, well, my value is based on how much I own or how much I earn or how much I produce, then what we're doing is we're saying some humans are worth more than others. And it's really I think that's what's at the core of the devastation in the world that we can witness around us now. And so Shelley says, yes, herbs, plants, mushrooms, etc. And Robert says, exactly. And so these groups are virtual. So maybe if they're virtual, are they open groups? If they're open groups, maybe you would share, Irma already asked for it, if you would share the resource, because I think that more and more of us would love to be engaged in that kind of community and that kind of interaction and connection. So, when you are able to, like lots of us are talking about decluttering, when you're able to rehome your possessions that you have enjoyed and cherished, and you're able to share them with somebody who really appreciates them, it makes giving those things away so much more, it makes it easier to give those things away, or to relieve yourself of those things and share them with somebody who will really appreciate them and enjoy them. And so Shelley says neighbors, and it creates unworthiness in those that feel they can't keep up with buying new and fancy things. This is our current culture. Yes, like, because if you don't have the newest, latest, and greatest, what's wrong with you? So we get to redefine our values to say, no, no, what I value um, sustainability. I value uh, utilizing things, and conservation, and therefore I don't need to buy the newest phone. I have a phone that provides everything I need and more. I can do everything I need to do with it. For instance, right? I don't need to buy 65 pairs of shoes. I kind of wear a uniform almost. I mean, I call it my uniform, where I just have um, tights and a top that I'm comfortable in, and it looks nice, and I don't need closets and closets and closets full of clothes. Why do we need that, right? And so let me finish what Shelley said, because she said it so well. So it creates unworthiness in those that feel they can't keep up with buying new and fancy things. It becomes an identity issue. We think we need new things, and it's just a toxic illusion. So well said, Shelley. I agree with you 100% that this whole notion of externalizing our value, like believing that I am a good or a bad person, or a better or lesser person based on what I wear, what I own, it's the car I drive. It's craziness. It's craziness how we define status based on things, and we assign our intrinsic value to these externalities. And it's those externalities, and it's that kind of value system that allows us to devalue human life and nature and all of the other sentient beings on the planet. So Irma says, Shelley, would you share this wonderful resource, which Shelley just did? That's awesome. And so apparently it's for meant to be for neighbors. So maybe it's something that people can set up in their own communities too. So buynothingproject.org. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Shelley. Wonderful, wonderful. And Shelley says you may be able to start one in your own neighborhood or community. Actually, isn't that a brilliant thing to be able to start that in your community and get to know your neighbors and be connected with people close by? I think that's brilliant. And what are the values that drive that? Well, community, connection, conservation, right? To be rehoming things. And yeah, so let's endeavor to be aware of our values. So where this came up for me, I'll just reiterate this morning, is I was listening to this conversation about AI, and people were talking about eliminating bias, but there needs to be bias. There needs to be some kind, and I don't know what they exactly mean in the AI term about eliminating bias, but the thing is that knowledge without morality is can be toxic, just incredibly deadly. I mean, look at what we've done with this idea of growth. It is this unending growth and this commodification of everything, including human life, is knowledge without valuing what needs to be valued. And then who gets to decide what the values are, right? Who gets to decide? Because there are people that if they get to decide, they're going to decide that certain people are worth more than other people. Certain people are more valuable than other people. And therefore certain people can be disregarded, right? Certain people, and in fact, that is what happens. That's why social justice is an important part of sustainability, because what happens is with factories, for instance, that are creating all these toxic wastes, where are they located? They're located typically in impoverished communities of color, right? And why is that? These places where these things are located, they're actually called sacrifice zones, literally called sacrifice zones, in that somebody has decided that these people living in these communities can be sacrificed. You know, that's the price of progress. How dare they? How dare they make these decisions? And so this is why values are fundamental, like creating values to move ourselves forward, to guide our technologies, to guide our industry, to guide our economies. The values are profoundly fundamental to creating something that enables us to move forward into a thriving future. Robert says, have you seen the Zeitgeist series where they had the Venus Project with self-sustaining communities? I have not seen the Zeitgeist series. I'm going to have to check it out. I'm all over self-sustaining communities and self-sustaining technologies. That's really what my podcast, Sustainability Now, is all about. If you want to check out Sustainability Now, there's so much great information. We interview, I have a partner in Sustainability Now named Scott Billy, and we find and interview people from all over the world doing all different kinds of wonderful things related to sustainability and technologies and new paradigms. Please check it out. If you go to sustainabilitynow.global, you'll see all the video interviews, and you can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. So Sustainability Now is what it's called. And there's a lot about alternative building and alternative energy sources and all kinds of things. So I invite you to check it out. And so Shelley says, growth has become a runaway train. It's perpetuating so many problems in our society. Exactly. So what's the problem there? The problem is that the fundamental value was growth at all costs. And growth is the most important thing. Well, that's not, it's not sustainable. And it's proving to have devastating consequences for us. And hello, Elaine, welcome. Yes, sustainabilitynow.global instead of .com. Sustainabilitynow.global. So check it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And also, it's Thursday, every Thursday night at 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, we have a movie night. And in our movie night, we share our interviews and also movies or other interviews. And typically we have somebody, the person that was being interviewed, or somebody who's a producer or director or involved in the film somehow. And we have a live conversation Q&A after we do the video. So tonight we're showing an interview that we didn't do, but that was done with a woman named Kate Raworth. And she came up with a new model, a new economic model for determining the prosperity of an economy called donut economics. And it takes into consideration human needs in terms of our health and welfare, and it also incorporates the ecological ceiling for being able to be sustainable. So it's an interrelationship between human and environmental well-being, and it creates sort of this donut shaped band of well-being. And it's a new metric to measure the health of an economy versus this continual growth notion that is completely unsustainable. So Irma says, Shelley, it would be nice for all to consider is that really growth after a point goes against sustainability of our own lives, right? Of our own lives, right? We missed the mark at some point. Yes, we exceeded the threshold. So I don't know about you, but I know for myself, if I push and push and push, at some point, I just crash and become exhausted. And that's what's happening here in our economy, because it cannot sustain unending growth. And we have the illusion of unending growth in our economy because why? They just keep printing more money. And so cultivating these other forms of or these other models, these other practices, is going to be our salvation, with barter and gift economy and circular economy, and being cognizant of the bigger picture and the fact that this notion of unending growth is absolutely absurd ultimately. So we do have the opportunity, if we are diligent and conscientious and active, all of us, we do have the opportunity to turn it around, but we don't have a very big window to do that. So it's important that we consider these things, and it's important that we look at redefining our cultural values as well as identifying and living into our personal values. So I think this has been an awesome conversation. I mean, we've gone longer and it's been really stimulating. So awesome to have you guys sharing resources and ideas. And hopefully these are ideas that we can take action with. Like we do get to vote with our pocketbooks, so to speak, you know, where we spend our money, what we choose, how we interact, like that. All of that is how we get to change the world also. So if we don't go buying for the sake of buying, you know, if we trade for used goods, if we recycle the things that we own and rehome them, we can shift this whole consumerism mentality for ourselves and propagate that out into our world, where it's not, doesn't have to be status that you have the latest and greatest, and that you can I've been thrift store shopping for years and find wonderful eclectic kinds of things that I am rehoming. This is a wonderful way to be more conservation oriented. Elaine says, for me, it's remembering what sustains life. Money or things do not sustain life, and move beyond fear of surviving. Yes, like there is so much bounty for us in the richness of life itself, without having to focus our attention on the acquisition of things. So I love this conversation. I'm so grateful for you to be engaging in this conversation with you. It's really powerful. Shelley says, I was called the fashion queen in my office and all my clothes were from consignment. Yes, exactly, because you get all these really unusual things that you can find and put together. I agree with you, Shelley, and it's remarkable, in terms of value, also having value for the dollar that you spend, when you're buying from consignment or thrift stores, and that's a wonderful way to uh, enjoy new things because they're new to you, right? And also be conserving because it's keeping things in a cycle. And Elaine says, I live a simplistic life. And there's such a beauty in that. Exactly. If we can elevate the value of simplicity, right? Simplicity. And I think that that's such a wonderful context, because life can easily become so overwhelming. There's so much input all the time that when we simplify, decluttering is not just a function of the physical things. Decluttering is also a function of our mental and emotional state and the kind of input that we have in our lives. There's so much information available all the time that we get to simplify, and there's a lot of freedom in that. And Isabel says, simplicity is divine as gratitude, or is as divine as gratitude. Yes, physical clutter is mental clutter. I think that there's a lot of parity between physical and mental clutter, for sure, for sure. And I could go on, and you guys are so engaging. It's really wonderful. Thank you, Rosalind. You two have a great rest of the day too. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. It's such a delight to spend this time with you, and I'm so grateful for it. With you. Thank you. And yes, allow yourself to be alert to the values that you're living from and that you're expressing in the world. It's a powerful way to bring ourselves into greater alignment. So until next time, lots and lots of love.